Hello viewers, I'm Effie Jo Stock and welcome back to my author channel. Today we're going to be diving into some of the ins and outs of publishing through Ingramspark, specifically paper options. So let's get started. Hey everyone, I'm Effie Jo Stock and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Like all the blood, or if they didn't think there was enough. Time has run out for the Duvaharians. The end of this life is near and the Emperor is preparing his return. If you've spent any amount of time in the publishing world trying to figure out how to publish, where to publish, you know that everything is left up to you, including trying to choose paper options. And you probably didn't even know that there were so many paper options until you started researching indie publishing, and there is quite a few, especially if you decide to go with a bigger distributor such as Ingramspark. Now usually you can go on to any distributor's website and they'll talk about their paper options and what sizes they can print them in and whether or not it's color or black and white or whatever. They do give you a lot of information, but what they don't really give you is what the paper even looks like or feels like, and that can be something that is very pivotal when you're choosing a paper for your book, whether you want cream or white or the ultra premium color or regular color or any of like the new stuff like the Groundwood paper. And all of that can be super confusing, especially if you're not sure what it's going to look like, feel like, and you don't want to spend a lot of money uploading new files to try to change paper types or to buy a bunch of proof copies to even just see. Which is why I am here today to show you guys some of the many different options that Ingramspark offers for paper, kind of compare some of them against each other, and then also give you my opinion on what I think is better and why. So today we're going to be talking about White 50, Creme 50, Groundwood, Premium Color, and Ultra Premium Color paper. And those are probably some of the more common options, including the two newest options, which is the Ultra Premium Color and the Groundwood paper. So first we're going to start with White 50. Okay, so white is not a color that you see super often in the book world, but I think a lot of self-published authors probably default to white because it just kind of seems like a simple, easy option. Ingramspark does offer like two kinds of basic white. They offer the White 50 and then the White 70, and basically the difference is just how thick or thin the paper is. 50 is going to be thinner, 70 is going to be a lot thicker. Now I published a Photo Gloves paperback with the White 50, and as you can see, it is white. It has very white color, nothing really super interesting going on with it. As far as like thickness, it just feels about average. It's not super thick, it's not thin like you think a mass paperback kind of would be. It's like decently floppy, but it still has a bit of thickness and weight to it, and it is considerably heavier than most mass paperback books. It also has a very smooth texture, like it feels like touching copy paper, not necessarily rough at all. So very smooth, very white. This is probably the most basic option. Now, according to Ingramspark's website, you are able to use White 50 for standard color printing. From what I've seen from some of their other white paper for color, which I'll show you in just a second, I wouldn't recommend it. I feel like the color would probably come out pretty dull and not saturated at all. It's very thin paper to be putting a lot of color into, so if I were doing any kind of color printing, I would definitely either jump up to the 70 or even the premium color or the ultra premium color, depending on what you're going for. But for black and white books, White 50 is not a bad option. It's just very plain. And for the next option that I'll be showing you guys today is the Creme 50. Now this has pretty much the same exact thickness and even the same texture as the white paper. However, it is simply a cream color. It's just softer on the eyes, not as abrasive. I really like the contrast between black ink and the cream. I'll kind of show you the difference. This is obviously white and this is cream, so you know it's pretty stark difference. But like I said, the texture is basically the same. I would say the cream is probably a little bit more rough has a little bit more of that, you know, mass-produced paperback sort of texture. It does make the book feel more like authentic, especially if you're doing fiction books. But overall, the thickness is pretty much exactly the same. They don't offer any color printing for Creme books, but that's not a big deal, to be honest. I think they just have the Creme 50, which is really quite a nice option for books. It looks great in my own. I've never been upset with it, had a problem with it, and it's a fairly decent like printing option as far as price-wise and publishing costs and things like that. Now, before we move on from the white 50 and the Creme 50 options to some of the other options, it is worth noting the importance of that number 50 and how it compares to other papers, say a 60-pound, a 70-pound paper, a 38-pound. It's all going to make a huge difference in how your book looks and feels. Now, obviously, Creme 50 and white 50 are both 50-pound paper, which means their thickness is exactly the same. So when you have books like this, which are both basically 500 page books, they're the exact same thickness. If you look at the spine, it's pretty much the exact same. So these books are always going to come out being a little bit thinner just because this paper stacks so closely to itself, but they're also going to be a lot heavier. Like, I can't remember how much these weigh each, but there's some pretty hefty books, and when you pick them up, you really feel like, oh wow, that's a big book. So if you're printing, you know, over 400 pages, 500 pages of book, or you have a book that's a bigger trim size, like a 6x9 instead of the 8.5 by 5.5, you're gonna have a very heavy book, and that can jack up shipping costs, whether it's from the distributor to you or from you to someone else. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. I chose the 50 specifically for my books because, like, Heir of Two Kingdoms is 150,000 words, and there's not a lot of ways you can get 150,000 words to fit in a small enough size that you're not just holding this huge book, not knowing what to do with it. So it works for me that the paper stacks closer, so I don't have such big books that take up a ridiculous amount of space and are hard to handle. But if you have a shorter book and you're trying to bump up the word count, try to go for lower poundages. And with that in mind, I think it's worth making our next option that we talk about, the Groundwood paper. Now, the Groundwood paper is a very, very recent addition to Ingramspark's world of paper options, and I am very excited about this one. They talk about the Groundwood paper like it's a mass paperback sort of paper, so that really thin, really kind of floppy, very rough paper. I decided to use it for my mini anthology that's coming out next month, and I am in love with it so far. It has the same color as the Creme, not too noticeably different as far as color goes. I would say it's basically a cream color. However, it's noticeably thinner. You can actually kind of, like, I don't know if you can see it on here, probably not, but when you have it up to the light, you can literally see the words on the other side. So it's very, very thin. This is their Groundwood paper 38-pound, so much thinner than, say, a 50-pound or a 70-pound paper. Colors are a little bit more, I would say, muted. Like, the black ink is a little bit more muted on it. So if you have, like, blacked out pages like this does, it's not going to be as stark of a contrast as if you printed it on a thicker paper that would hold more of the ink. But it's very floppy. It flops around very easily if that's what you're going for. These pages are, like, they're super bendy, very light. I mean, I know it's a small book, but this thing you could just throw it around. It's just itty bitty. And the texture is very rough. It's a very familiar feel if you're used to reading traditionally published books. And so, like, Caraval has that sort of rough, very thin paper, or say books like The Hobbit, you pick it up and you're like, wow, this is so light. Paper's really rough, very thin, very floppy. That's the kind of paper that the Groundwood paper is. I would say of all the options that Ingramspark currently offers, this is potentially the most professional type of paper to use because it is so similar to the mass paperback traditionally published paper type. I'm very excited about this. This is a great way to lower any shipping costs because it makes the books so much lighter. You won't have to pay as much buying books from your distributor or if you're shipping signed copies to somebody. And especially for books that you kind of want to up the page count a little bit, especially for like a little book like this, Groundwood is definitely the way to go. Next up on our list is going to be the premium color option, which is print on the white 70 paper. Now, whenever I first got this, I wasn't 100% impressed necessarily with the color. The colors felt too soft, too dull, not really in a way that I think is going to be super noticeable to anybody unless they're really scrutinizing it. But I did a children's book, and since the pictures are very, very important and I put a lot of time into having the colors really pop, I wasn't 100% happy with it. But the paper, I would say, it's a lot more rough than like the white 50. It is definitely a lot thicker. You can tell that this is, you know, paper that was made to have a lot of ink put onto it. And as you can see, the colors aren't bad at all. It's nothing to like worry about, especially if you're wanting to go with a cheaper printing option. And up until this point, this is the only like really good color option that Ingramspark offered, which was just their premium color option. But they have just come out with another option, and I'm going to show that one to you next, and it is now called their ultra premium color option. Now, like I said, Ingramspark's ultra premium color option has not been available for very long, but as soon as I heard that it was available, I changed the paper type in my children's book and ordered me a proof copy, so now I have both and I can compare them next to each other. And I hope that you guys can see the difference because it's actually a very big difference. So this is going to be the ultra premium color option, and already you can just tell that these colors are popping a lot better, and then you can also see, especially up here where the words are, that sort of sheen that it has, which I think really helps bring attention to the colors, and it gives it a softer feel, so it feels less like a book and more like an actual picture book. So you can kind of see that very, very small sheen. It's not like a gloss cover sheen where you can't see it if it's in the light a certain way. You can obviously still see everything, but the yellows, the reds, you know, everything that really makes this children's book cute pops a heck of a lot more with the ultra premium color option. And if I can hold these up at the same time, I'm going to kind of show you guys the same page. So as you can see, this one just comes across a little bit more dull than this one does, especially with her hair color, her boots, the reds and the yellows. It's almost indiscernible on camera, but I'm telling you, it makes a huge difference when it's in person. So if you've got like a coloring book or a children's book, I would spend the extra money, or to have them take the extra money out of the printing cost and go with the ultra premium color. That is 100% my recommendation. And before we wrap up, I just want to say anything that you choose for your books has to be done for your books. Each book is going to need a different kind of paper. You're going to find that sometimes the way that you want things printed, for instance, if you want blacked out pages like this, but you want them to have that really, really nice black on white contrast, then absolutely go for it. Pick the white paper option. If you're wanting a book to be a lot lighter so you can save on printing costs, go with the Groundwood. If you're just wanting something kind of in the middle, Creme is always really, really nice. If you're just wanting to do a cheap children's book and not, worry about extra printing costs, and you're not super worried about color, just go with the standard color, not a big deal. If you're going for something really nice, absolutely have that little bit of extra cost, go with the ultra premium. So it really is just up to you what you need for your books. And even though Ingramspark can be pretty confusing with all the trim sizes they offer, paper options, sometimes paper options can only be used on certain sizes, and so on and so forth, they do actually offer really good resources for you to be able to check to see which trim sizes are going to be compatible with which paper types. And you can find that by going to their website, going to their resource page, and then finding their calculators. And you can even just type in Ingramspark publishing calculators and it should come right up. And the calculator that I always use is their print and ship calculator, and it shows you all of the options. You can just, you click on the size, you click on whether or not you want color, if you're going to be paperback, hardback, and it shows you every option that they have available for that trim size, and you can can mess around with it as many times as you want. You don't have to have an ISBN number. You don't even have to have an Ingramspark account. You can just mess around and see if they have the options that you want, and I'm sure they will because they have a lot of options. But then you can also calculate printing costs and see how much the books are going to cost you, and then how much shipping is going to cost. And it can just be really helpful if you're trying to especially weigh out the pros and cons of each paper type, along with how much each one is going to cost you for printing. For instance, the Groundwood paper is the cheapest paper to get printed, and the ultra premium paper is the most expensive. So if you're wanting to cut costs, or if you're spare no expense, that's a great calculator to use to kind of decide where you're going to go with your book. I hope this video has been super helpful. I've been wanting to do something like this for a really long time, but I felt I needed to gather more material to be able to do it with, and since I have all of their paper options now, I thought it was a good time to kind of give this tutorial. But if there's anything that I missed, or any other questions that you guys might have, absolutely contact me on Instagram, FEJoeStockAuthor, or just put your question down in the comments below and I'll be more than happy to answer. I'm gonna start doing a lot more of these how to publish through Ingramspark videos, including how to get your own ISBN numbers, or how to deal with their retail price percentages and what kind of files you might need, and then also just ins and outs and tips and tricks. So if you're interested in that sort of thing, subscribe to this channel and hopefully they'll be coming out very, very soon. Thank you guys so much for watching, and may the sun smile upon your presence.